So the New York Times went after Bernie, and, this is an argument that we've seen time and time again. It's not just the New York Times. Other outlets have done the same thing, where they say, he's been in Congress, and he's been in the Senate for, forever, and what does he have to show for it, bro? Listen, he's like a hardcore lefty ideologue, and they can't get anything accomplished. The only way to get stuff accomplished is to be a centrist, because when you're a centrist, you could, give the right wing everything they want and then brag about how you achieve stuff. They didn't say that last part, but they do make the argument of, he's a lefty ideologue, he never gets anything accomplished, so, he's not serious. He's been in Washington, D.C. his whole life, and what does he have to show for it? That's an argument people actually make. Well, all the snarkiness aside, we're going to answer that question. Courtesy of one of Bernie's policy advisors, Warren Gunnels, here's some of Bernie's accomplishments. Number 1, providing 9 million more Americans with primary health care. That seems important. 2 million more with dental care and 860,000 more with mental health services through a $12.5 billion expansion in community health centers. Number 2, raising the wages of 350,000 Amazon workers to at least $15 an hour. How did he do that one? Him and Ro Khanna proposed the Stop Bezos Act, and then Bezos got scared as fuck, and then he said, okay, I'm going to raise wages. Number 3, increasing the wages of over 60,000 Disney workers to at least $15 an hour. Number 4, restoring $320 million in pension benefits to 130,000 IBM workers. Number 5, 7 states and over 40 cities passed a $15 an hour minimum wage law because, Bernie was out there leading the charge and fighting on this front, marching alongside, protesters who are also fighting incredibly hard for this. Number 6, passage of veterans legislation with John McCain providing $5 billion to hire more doctors and nurses at the VA. Number 7, passage of legislation ending our involvement in the Saudi-led war in Yemen. Number 8, passage of the first and only audit of the Federal Reserve in 2010. I actually think he worked with Ron Paul for that one. Number 9, passage of the National Affordable Housing Trust Fund Act. Number 10, preventing Social Security cuts to seniors and disabled veterans. That's an area where Joe Biden and Barack Obama were working on the opposite side, and they wanted to cut Social Security. Where was I? Number 11, stopping the Postal Service from closing up to 15,000 post offices and over 100 mail processing plants, ending Saturday mail and slashing over 100,000 jobs. Number 12, passing more roll call amendments than anyone in a Republican Congress. That's why they called him the Amendment King, by the way. Number 13, passage of $3.2 billion in energy efficiency and renewable energy grants. Number 14, raising wages of federal contractors to at least $10.10 an hour in 2014. Number 15, banning the credit card interest rate bait and switch scam. Number 16, doubling funding for the Low-Income Home Energy Assistance Program. Number 17, creating the Northeast Home Heating Oil Reserve. Number 18, stopping bailed out banks from replacing U.S. workers with low-wage guest workers. Number 19, prohibiting the importation of goods made by forced or indentured child labor. Number 20, mandating free credit reports for all Americans. Now, I want to be clear about something. This is not a comprehensive list. This is just a partial list of the things that Bernie Sanders has accomplished. Other things that are incredibly important are also what he didn't do. Okay? So, for example, he did not support the war in Iraq. On that alone, massive, massive credit, and it almost puts him above and beyond all the other Democratic candidates on that alone. He also did not support the TPP, despite many Democrats supporting it, and despite the Democratic president trying to shove it down the Democratic caucus's throat. So that's another thing he didn't support. So just as important as the stuff he did accomplish and he did get through are the things that he didn't support. Because Bernie Sanders was reliably on the proper side of every, hot button issue his entire career. When other politicians like Hillary Clinton and Joe Biden were doing what was politically convenient at the moment, like being for endless wars, Bernie Sanders stood on principle. So this busts up the utter nonsense idea of, what do you mean? He's done nothing because he's a left ideologue. Listen, guys, bipartisanship and compromise is not inherently good. It's not inherently good to work with the right. It depends what you're working with them on. So, for example, many centrist Democrats and blue dog Democrats work with Republicans to deregulate Wall Street. They got legislation passed, but is that a good thing? No, it's terrible. It's horrendous. It's bad. It's going to bring us to another stock market crash and another great recession. So it's not like bipartisanship and compromise is inherently good. But if you were inclined to talk about bipartisanship and compromise as a good thing, well then, okay, Bernie Sanders is your guy. Because guess what? Bernie Sanders works with libertarian-leaning senators, senators, but then also when he was in Congress, he would work with people who are now in the Freedom Caucus. I don't think the Freedom Caucus existed at the time, but he would work with them on ending wars. He would work with them on criminal justice reform. So Bernie Sanders is willing to work with the other side if it's towards positive ends. If it's towards negative shit, not if it's starting another war or deregulating Wall Street more. But he actually does have a record of bipartisanship, but he does bipartisanship when it makes sense. So these are perfect examples of it here, man. You are not going to find another politician who's been this principled, this uncorrupted, and this intelligent with his strategy throughout his entire career. He worked with the right, with Mike Lee to be specific, with stopping the U.S. support of the genocide in Yemen. Guess what? Donald Trump vetoed that. So you get the best of both worlds. You get somebody who's principled. You get somebody who has actual values that reflect the American people. You get somebody who has a coherent ideology. And also you get somebody who does work with the other side, but only when it makes sense. He's never going to work with the other side against his own values and against the values of the American people. That's unlike a lot of centrist Democrats who go along to get along and they work with Republicans to serve their corporate donors. That is not Bernie Sanders. So the New York Times can shove it. All these outlets that acted like he didn't get anything accomplished can shove it. They simply are dead wrong.